Wake up, wake up, wake up! Wake the fuck up, wake up, a little Susie. If your name's Susie, I'm talking to everybody, not just Susies. True story. Hello, it's me. Welcome to this week's episode of Behind the Streams, where we do a little deep dive into the permafrost of this week's post. And if the earth keeps melting, if you believe that, we will actually be diving to go to work or whatever. I better get my scuba certification. Put that on the list. The title of this week's post was, "We are simple worms yearning to melt our permafrost." And right there in the title you have two of the stars of the post. Permafrost and a worm. Wake up. Yo, wake up. Wake up! Because that's exactly what the worm did. Woke the up. If you read this week's post, you'll already sort of know what I'm talking about in relation to the worm and the permafrost. But if you didn't read it, which I don't blame you, here's the 411 for my non-American viewers, which is probably just my dad. The 411 is the information line here in the good old US of A, the shorthand for giving you the skinny on something. Like 50 being shorthand for the po-po. 50! Like in Hawaii 50. Did you know that? Of course you knew that. These are just codes. The whole world is coded. Know your codes. Look at me, digressing already. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! So, the worm. What's its origin story? Well, I'm glad you didn't ask. About 46,000 years ago, this little worm, or these little worms, fell asleep in the Siberian permafrost. Got to like a long, dark nap of the soul, but not dead. Just sleeping. And everything from this point forward is probably going to sound like an episode of The X-Files. I'm trying to remember what the episode was where they got some ice core sample and it had this killer bacterial worm in it and, it woke up and got to slaying almost immediately.
Deep beneath the Arctic Circle, an ancient terror sleeps.
Nothing can survive for 250,000 years.
I mean, it didn't do the slaying. It got in people's brains and they did the slaying. Oh, I'm already off track. Sorry. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up! And stop yelling. X-Files also had that black oil. Was that in the ice? I think that was in the ice. All my Gen X peoples are screaming at me right now about which episodes was which. Again, digressing. Wake up, Janine. Wake up. Move on. Get to telling. So scientists found these little nematodes at a depth of about 130 feet in this Siberian permafrost in a fossilized gopher hole. There's the sense.
Who is the gopher's ally?
They pull them out, add a little drop of water, and they came to life. Just like sea monkeys. Are they sea monkeys? I don't think they're sea. Maybe. You know what else was alive 46,000 years ago? Mammoths. So woolly. Anyway, when these snoozin', I want to say Susans, but that doesn't really mean anything. When these slumberins, you can't make this work, Janine, give up. When these worms woke up.
Time to wake up, bitch, get up.
They immediately got spicy, got down to business, starting with wriggling, I guess. I don't know much about prehistoric worms. I know a little bit about earthworms. Actually, I don't know anything about earthworms. I've touched an earthworm. I do know this, though. When I am out riding my bicycle after it has rained or during the rain, and that has, for some reason, encouraged earthworms to come out on the road, and I unwittingly roll over them, they fling up onto my bike frame. And if you let them dry there, they're really hard to remove. That's what I know about earthworms, and I just described a murder scene. So sorry. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! But this worm, or plural, worms, were parasitic roundworms, not earthworms. And they're minuscule. Minuscule. Imagine that earthworm that I just planted in your mind. Now shrink it. Shrink it again. Further, shrink it even more. These things are like roughly a millimetre in length. They're short kings. You need an electron microscope to see the little blighters. That's how small they are. They have a scientific name, and I'm going to look down on this piece of paper right now and read it out to you poorly. Probably. The full name for this worms is Panagrolamus collimaensis nematode roundworm. Sorry, I butchered that. This is why I'm not a scientist. Well, there's a lot of other reasons I'm not a scientist. I'm not smart. It's named after the Kolyma River in Russia. Anyway, long story short, they added a drop of water to the little guys. They woke up, immediately started reproducing, and then they died. There's a life. This actually happened back in 2018, by the way. The report and the findings were just published. Facts. They're important. They used to say content is king, but context is everything. So these worms woke up demonstrating that for some, these were probably billionaire worms, I'm guessing, who could afford to cryogenically freeze themselves. Was it capitalism 46,000 years ago? Doesn't matter. This basically demonstrated that they could pause life indefinitely. I know what you're thinking already. It's like, there's an opportunity to exploit this in some way. How did the worms do it? Could humans do it? Could that cryogenically frozen thing actually work? Wake up. Just wake the up. Wake up! There's a quote here from a scientist called Dr. Kurchalia. It's harder to pronounce than the worm's name. Quote, the major take-home message or summary of this discovery is that it is, in principle, possible to stop life for more or less an indefinite time and then restart it. So cryptobiosis. I mean, I was saying cryogenically because that's just on ice, but cryptobiosis is possible if you're a microscopic worm living in permafrost or sleeping in permafrost in the Arctic in a fossilised gopher hole. You gotta have dreams, gotta have aspirations, guys. Wake up! Wake up! So 2 things came out of this story for me. 1, fear. I mean, if there's microscopic worms in there that can come back to life in the permafrost and get to doing stuff like nothing has happened, then what else is in the permafrost? What, are we going to defrost something that's like virus, gets up our noses and lays its eggs and suddenly we got a dinosaur brain? That'll be fun. I'll be worm food by then. That happens, surely. One can only hope. The second thing that this story moved in me was inspiration for this week's post, which is why you're here. Like the story behind the post, it was literally reading this story and thinking, aren't we all just a little bit frozen from time to time? We can't seem to move forward to what we want to do or who we want to be or even figuring out who we are. We're just immobile, frozen in the permafrost of our lives. Wake up! Like we're just waiting for someone to thaw us out and point us to the exit or the entry or just our life in general. I say, wake up, wake up, wake up, because this is on you. Maybe someone will jostle you, but the actual waking up and getting out of your inert bed, that is on you. You got to get to work. Wake up and write that thing or make that art or go to that art class or work out what your relationships are to your work and your life and the people in your life. Because when I say wake up, it's like not just about trying to make things creatively. It's about being an active participant in your own life. Wake up and thaw the blocks of ice around your feet that are stopping you from moving. Guys, wake up. Life is passing you by. If you are inert, if you are delaying action because you think, oh, I can just, I can keep putting this off and come back to it at a later time. You can't pause your life indefinitely. The timeline moves on without you. Situations move on without you. History moves on without you. You are not on pause. Your body ages while you're in pause. It keeps declining. That's really depressing to hear, but you got to make the most of every day. Wake up! Wake up. Wake up! What is this movement? All this stuff happens if you are awake, if you have woken up, by the way. But the difference is you're engaged in it. You're participating in the awake state. So yes, you keep aging. Yes, relationships come and go. Yes, your work fails or it succeeds, or you might realise that through the waking state you have realised that actually this is not for me. But you have to be awake to see, to examine, to ask yourself the questions. Listen to me. Philosopher Janine is in the house. Wake up. Guys, wake up. You have to be right here on Earth, but outside of your permafrost shell. There's no, I could just keep repeating the same wake up things over and over again, but I think you probably get the gist of what I'm saying. You got to wake up, participate. Another way to say it would be to be present. But, I got to think of some other way to say it, and it's wake up and get out of your permafrost shell. Wake up, little worm. Time to defrost and get to working. One of the things I've noticed the past 3 years has been a slow and steady waking up, further waking up. I mean, I'm always waking up. I go through periods of being awake. But over the past 3 years where I've specifically focused on writing my own things, but not at the expense of actually, writing for work and getting my rent, putting food on my table and keeping me afloat, which is essentially what I do, is stay afloat. But I've noticed the more that I have written for myself, like actually made a practice of doing a weekly post, of having to be constantly thinking of things to write about and writing quickly. I don't spend a lot of time, it's pretty obvious probably, that I don't spend a lot of time on these posts because it's practice. They say practice makes perfect. It doesn't make perfect. It makes proficient. Because if you're striving for perfect, you're not looking at it the right way, because things should be, I think, imperfect. You're not going for perfect. You're going for proficient. You're going for rough edges, weird angles that, despite looking wrong, are actually right because you're proficient at what you're doing. I'm pointing a lot today. That's what you want to do. You want to get in the ritual of waking up, essentially, and doing the thing that you need to do. I'm using creativity as the thing, which is probably a very privileged thing to say, well, yeah, you can take time to do this. Well, it's not without risks. I'm also not saying quit your job. Please don't quit your job. The act of waking up should make you aware of the things that need fixing or changing. You don't need to quit your job. I feel like I'm the warning on the side of a coffee cup right now, which, if you ever look into that McDonald's coffee story, it's pretty messed up. Wake up! You got shit to do. Be like the Panagrolamus collimaensis worm, who, even though only has a very short lifespan, when it woke up after 46,000 years of just chilling on ice, see what I did there? It woke up and it got right down to business. Started wriggling first, had a bit of a stretch. Then it got to reproducing multiple generations within a couple of days. And then it died. It maximised its time on Earth. You might say, well, reproduction can't be the goal. No, but I'm sure if that worm had access to a typewriter, it would have written like a poem or a screenplay, perhaps. Moved to LA. Who knows what happens in the mind of a worm when presented with a worm-sized typewriter? Janine, wake up, move on. This is over. On that note, this worm salutes you and says farewell. I will see you next week, I guess. Love what you love. I'll see you out there making stuff.
Fight!
I'm back. I was just wondering what sort of poem a worm who'd been asleep for 46,000 years would write if it had the chance before it died. So I whipped one up. You may recognise the structure. This is just to say, I have wriggled my body into this hole for a gopher, where you had expected to raise your pups. Forgive me, the dirt's perfect, so gritty and cold. I'm not saying worms are plagiarists, but, it's more of an homage in style. And now I want some plums. That's a reference. Only people who know and recognise the structure of that poem. Okay. Bye. Enjoy waking up. Wake me up before you go.